I've tested over 30 camping tents in the rain and only a measly 5 tents did great. And I'll also give you 4 pro tips that you absolutely need to know so that you can pick the best one for yourself. If you're looking for an affordable 1 to 4 person tent for heavy rain, there's no better pick than the Teton Sports Mountain Ultra. I put this tent through 1 hour of heavy rain, which looked like this, and after that the rain became more of a light to moderate rain. This continued for many hours, way into the night, and it was still raining the next morning. The rain finally stopped after 12 hours and I found that there was not a single drop of water inside the tent. And here's where I'm gonna give you pro tip number 1, what are the exact features to look out for when buying a waterproof tent. First, look at the length of this tent's rainfly. Notice how it's a full length rainfly and extends almost all the way down to the ground. There's only a little gap at the bottom for some ventilation. Full rainflies always have much better rain protection than partial rainflies. Next, look at the seam taping in this tent. Notice how the seams have been very thoroughly taped, especially at the corners. After my rain test, I checked all the seams and none of them let in a single drop of water. Another feature is whether the tent has a vestibule for storing any wet gear that you may have. I especially liked the Mountain Ultra for this. The 1-person model has 1 vestibule, while the 2 to 4-person models have 2 vestibules each. I have both the 1 and 2-person models, but I much prefer the 2-person because I get the largest floor space possible. On top of the 34 square feet of inner tent space, which can fit up to a queen bed, I also got 2 huge vestibules, which gave me an additional 14 square feet of vestibule space together for a whopping 48.5 square feet of space in total. The last important feature is vents and whether these can be opened and shut from the inside of the tent. My 2-person Mountain Ultra had 2 rainfly vents at the top of the tent. These can be accessed only from the outside, and the angle of the vent tends to let in a lot of water, so I'd recommend just keeping them closed if you expect any rain. Thankfully, there are 2 more vestibule vents, 1 in each vestibule, and I could open and shut these from the inside of the tent. If you're looking for an easy to set up tent, I've tested over 10 different instant and pop-up tents, and I found that the Quechua 2 seconds are easily the best in the rain. I have both the regular and the fresh and black model, and I was able to put them through not just a 1 hour heavy rain test, not just some light flooding in my yard, but also a 3-day heavy afternoon rain test. And wow, these tents were shockingly bomb-proof. I'll show you exactly why using these 4 features in pro tip number 1. First, both tents have full rainflies covering the entire inner tent. These tents may seem like single-wall tents, but they're not. There are 2 layers to this tent. The outer layer is the rainfly, which is either green or white here, and the inner layer is a black polyester layer, completely separate from the rainfly layer, which keeps your tent bone dry even in heavy rain. Second, the seam taping is really thorough in this tent. All the important seams, like those on the flooring, have been factory taped. Third, sadly, the 2-second tents I have here do not have vestibules, so I'd recommend upgrading to the 2 seconds easy instead, a much newer model, and this has a small vestibule. And fourth, the regular 2 seconds model is pretty bad when it comes to ventilation, with only 1 rear vent that doesn't do all that much. So if you're thinking about buying the exact same 2 seconds tents I have here, I'd recommend going for the fresh and black. It has 2 huge rainfly vents, 1 at each length of the tent, and I could leave these completely open in the heavy rain. On top of that, I could even shut these vents from the inside of the tent, just in case water got into my tent. Here's the next pro tip I have for you, and I want you to check out the prices of the 2 seconds tents in the local DECATHLON I have here in Singapore, where I'm from. And I'm also going to get the US DECATHLON prices as well. Notice that they're actually quite a bit more expensive. So if you're trying to decide between the 2 seconds and the Mountain Ultra to get the best possible bang for your buck, I'd recommend the Mountain Ultra if you live in the States, because it's quite a bit less expensive, and I'd recommend the 2 seconds if you have a DECATHLON store in your country, and especially if you live in Asia, it's a great price here. One big difference I noticed between these 2 tents as well is that the Quechua tents seem a little more budget quality to me, with polyethylene for the flooring and just fiberglass for the poles, while the Teton Sports was higher quality with 150D polyester flooring and 7000 series aluminum poles. Now it's time for pro tip number 3, which is this. Do not go for any other budget tents if you actually want a waterproof tent. Both Teton Sports and Decathlon are probably the two least expensive waterproof tents that I've tested, and I would highly recommend either of them if you're on a budget. If you're thinking of going any more budget, like maybe Coleman, Core Equipment, or heavens forbid, Ozark Trail, I'm just going to tell you very nicely that these aren't great in rain, yeah? I'm gonna quickly flash a few of my Coleman tent rainflies on the screen here. Let me know what you think about them. Well, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, most of them are just so tiny. The same thing goes for Core as well. Most of their tents look very similar to Coleman tents, and the rainflies are equally tiny. There are a couple of tents from both Coleman and Core that have full-length rainflies, and I guess you could consider these if you want, but I think they're still gonna have this one problem. Again, I'm going to quickly flash a few shots of some seams from both my Coleman tents and Core tents. Again, look at them and let me know what you see. Yep, you got it. These seams are not taped. Both these brands feature inverted seams around the entire tent instead of taped seams like in Teton Sports or Quechua. There hasn't been a single tent that I've bought from Coleman and Core that come completely taped. Usually there will be a mix of taped and inverted seams. And sadly, inverted seams do not take heavy rain well and are usually the first place to leak in these tents. And here's the third big problem. After the seams start leaking, sometimes I also notice that the fabric would leak as well, and this issue was the most common in my Coleman and Core tents, basically because they're budget brands. Why does this happen? Well, I think that has got to do with the hydrostatic head rating of each tent. Waterproof tents generally have a rating of at least 1,000 millimeters, and anything less than this is just water resistant and not waterproof. Core tents have a 600 millimeter rating, so only water resistant. Coleman tents vary from 450 to 1,000 millimeters, but most of them are usually on the lower end of 450, so again, only water resistant. And I have no idea what the rating of Ozark tents are. For my Coleman and Core tents, I noticed that the fabric of these tents will get damp and start leaking after about 30 minutes to an hour of heavy rain. On the other hand, for all the waterproof tents in this video, none of their fabric got damp even after hours of heavy rain. In practical terms, here's how long the average tent from each brand lasted for me, not just under light rain, but also under heavy rain. I found Core and Coleman to be about the same, lasting about 3 hours in light to moderate rain and between 30 minutes to 60 minutes in heavy rain. And Ozark tents are the worst into rain, coming in at just 15 minutes in light rain and will get drenched almost immediately in heavy rain. And these three reasons are basically the small rainflies, the lack of seam taping, and the low hydrostatic head rating are why most Coleman and Core tents are just water resistant out of the box, emphasis on resistant, and are nowhere near being waterproof. Now, moving away from these smaller tents, we're going to look at some family camping tents, and I'm going to start us off with the best cabin tent for heavy rain, which is the REI Wonderland 6. I've tested more than 10 cabin tents for this channel, and again, let me know what you think about their rainflies. Yep, each one of them has really small rainflies covering only the very top of the tent. Some of them cover maybe 1/3 of the tent, some extend down only about 5 to 10 inches, and some are absolutely tiny. On the other hand, the Wonderland has the longest rainfly of them all, extending all the way down to the ground for the most part. But the thing is, there's this small gap in the rainfly in the middle, and that's to cater to the bottom triangle windows. But because of this though, after I put the Wonderland through 1 hour of heavy rain, followed by a few hours of moderate rain after, so basically one entire night of raining, there were 2 drops of water in the tent from the divider loops at the bottom. I'll show you roughly where these loops are from the outside. Notice how they're not covered by the rainfly at the bottom. That's the problem. I think REI might have goofed on these loops because they weren't waterproof, so once you get that sealed, there should be no leaking. Luckily, the rest of this Wonderland was extremely thoroughly seam taped. I didn't find any other issues. My Wonderland didn't come with any vestibules though, but you can buy one or even two of these separate mudrooms, but of course that's an extra cost. If you expect to take your cabin tent through crazy rains instead, you could look at tents with completely full rainflies instead, like this Big Agnes bunkhouse, and that also comes with a big vestibule at the front without having to pay extra for it. The next waterproof family tent is the REI Base Camp 6. It has so much more fabric than mesh, so that's why this tent is also my best shoulder season tent for heavy rain. First, it has a full-length rainfly that extends almost all the way down to the ground. So even when I sprayed tons of water on the base camp for 1 full hour, the rainfly protected the inner tent body really well. The water dripped off the rainfly and onto the ground directly without touching the inner tent body too much, and the tent stayed completely dry. Second, the base camp has a whopping 4 vents. 2 of them are roof vents and the other 2 are floor vents, and I really loved that I could open and shut these vents from the inside of the tent. And third, this base camp has a whopping 2 vestibules, more than most other family tents I've seen. The front vestibule is pretty big, coming in at about 31 square feet, and this can easily fit 2 camping chairs no problem at all. The back vestibule is much smaller though and couldn't even fit 1 chair. It does have a base area of about 21 square feet though, so this back vestibule is great for storing wet gear. However, here's one not so good thing that I noticed about the base camp, and that's the seam taping. Some seams on the flooring have been taped, so like these seams running the length of the tent, and also the corner seams. But this other flooring seam here, which is right at the edge of the floor and connects up to the rest of the tent body, hasn't been taped, and also this white seam running all the way down to the bottom of the tent at the corners is also not taped. Both these seams have only been inverted. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, inverted seams don't do so well in the heavy rain. So to test this, I sprayed water directly onto the tent body and not the rainfly. And I noticed that after 30 to 45 minutes, there was some leaking through these seams right here at the corners. I think REI was counting on the full-length rainfly to protect enough of the tent body, so they didn't tape these seams. But the thing is, if there's light flooding, the seams on the flooring need to be sealed for sure to prevent water from getting in. Luckily, this isn't too big of a fix, and once you get that done, you're gonna have yourself a really bomb-proof off-season family tent. But if you want a bomb-proof family tent right out of the box, you don't want to have to do any waterproofing prep work like in the Wonderland and the base camp, then I have no better pick for you than the North Face Wawona 6, and this is my best overall waterproof tent for heavy rain. If you thought my Quechua rain test was heavy, check out the Wawona's rain test. My Wawona's first heavy rain test was about 3 hours long, and it rained so heavily that my entire yard completely flooded. The water was up to my ankles, and I also noticed that the entire bottom of my Wawona was sitting in 2 inches of water. But after the 3 hours of heavy rain and flooding, I didn't find a single drop of water inside the tent at all. Even the seams at the corners, which were completely submerged in water, didn't leak at all. And that's because the seam taping all around this tent was very thorough. Every single seam not covered by the rainfly was perfectly taped. So even though this tent doesn't have a full-length rainfly, the thorough seam taping made up for that. Another of the biggest reasons I'm recommending the Wawona as one of the best waterproof tents is because of its humongous vestibule, the biggest I've ever seen in a family camping tent. This single vestibule comes in at a whopping 51 square feet and can fit not just a couple of huge camping chairs, but it even has enough space left over for a big camping table as well. On top of that, the peak height in the vestibule is 74 inches. The lowest height is still a whopping 65 inches, and I could stand up everywhere inside this entire vestibule. However, one thing that could have been improved in the Wawona is the user-friendliness of the 2 side windows and also the 2 side vents. There is one of each on each side of the tent. These cannot be opened from the inside, which I didn't like, but thankfully none of them leaked at all, even in such heavy rain. Now, if you want to know the breaking point of this Wawona, well, I found it after putting this tent through a whopping 3 days of heavy rain. After the 3rd day of rain, I noticed that the back wall was slightly damp from the inside. It didn't drip into the tent or anything, but my hand was slightly damp from touching the wall. Remember this chart that I showed you earlier in the video when I was giving you my 3rd pro tip? I'm gonna place the Wawona as the best of all these tents because it has a rating of about 1200 millimeters, so a lot more waterproof, and the breaking point would be about 3 days. If the rating had been a bit higher, it could have gone up to 5 days, maybe even a week of rain. So now you know how these ratings affect how long the tent stays dry. My fourth pro tip for you here is this. When you're looking for a waterproof tent, do also consider the wind conditions you'll be camping in. This is another huge reason why the Wawona is simply the best. I put my Wawona through about 15-mile-per-hour winds and it held up completely fine because I had it all guyed out. It comes in a nice aerodynamic dome shape, it has a massive number of guidelines, plus the highest quality DAC MX aluminum poles, so naturally it's the best against wind. And that's why I love the Wawona over the Base Camp and the Wonderland. It's not only the most rainproof, but also the best in wind. Unless of course you're camping in the off-season, then the Wawona isn't as good as the Base Camp. It's a strictly 3-season summer camping tent, thanks to the ceiling mesh panels and of course the huge amount of mesh on the front wall. If you'd like me to test other waterproof car camping tents as well, and maybe even one day backpacking tents too, please help me smash that like button. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate all your support.